I secured a lavish penthouse without a word. Days later, my family appeared, surprising me with moving boxes. "Your sister's moving in." I grinned, poured coffee, and then revealed my grand accomplishment to them. Can you imagine pouring your entire soul, your every late night, and every hard-earned penny into creating a sanctuary for yourself, a place that finally feels like yours, only for your family to show up with your sister's moving boxes, demanding she live there? It felt like a betrayal so deep, so audacious, it still makes my blood boil when I think about it. It all started the day my mother announced, just like she was commenting on the weather. "Your sister's moving in? We already packed her stuff." She stood in the doorway of my brand new penthouse in Minneapolis, like she owned the place. Behind her, my dad, my sister Brianna, and my brother Austin were all lugging boxes and shopping bags. They looked like they just returned from some grand shopping spree, not attempting a hostile takeover of my home. I just stood there, coffee mug in hand, utterly stunned. My name's Eden, I'm 29, and for the very first time in my life, I had something that was entirely, completely mine. This penthouse wasn't just some real estate purchase. No, it was a declaration of independence. After years as a senior logistics coordinator for Travanta Corp., countless late nights hunched over spreadsheets, routing schedules, constantly being passed over for recognition while watching others take credit for my hard work, I had finally saved enough to buy this place. It was sleek, modern, on the 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. It was my sanctuary. And now, apparently, it was about to become Brianna's new home too. I blinked at them, my coffee mug warm against my palms, trying to ground myself. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" My mother just walked right in, no invitation needed. Her heels clicked sharply against the hardwood floor, the same floor I'd spent weeks agonizing over. "Brianna needs a place to stay while she figures things out. You have all this space, Eden. It only makes sense she stays here with you." Brianna, my 26-year-old sister, gave me this sheepish smile from behind a stack of boxes. They looked suspiciously well organized for a spontaneous move. She'd always been the golden child, you know? The one who could do no wrong, the one everyone rallied around when life got tough. She'd bounce from job to job, apartment to apartment, relationship to relationship. And every single time, the entire family mobilized like she was some wounded bird needing constant care. Meanwhile, I'd been working since I was 16. Put myself through college while working 2 jobs. Climbed my way up in a brutally competitive industry where women are still fighting for recognition. I asked for nothing from anyone. And somehow, that independence made me the one people felt comfortable taking from. "Mom, I just moved in 2 weeks ago," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, measured. "I didn't even know Brianna was looking for a new place." "Well, now you do," my mother said briskly, plopping a large shopping bag on my pristine kitchen counter. "We thought it would be nice for you two to spend more time together. You're always so busy with work. This way, you'll have family around. It'll be good for both of you." I looked at my father, begging for some sign of support, some acknowledgement that this was completely insane. But he just shrugged, that passive way he always did when my mother made unilateral decisions. "It's temporary, Eden. Just until Brianna gets back on her feet financially." Temporary. God, that word. It had been used to describe so many things in my family over the years. Temporary help. Temporary loans that were never repaid. Temporary stays that became permanent residencies. Nothing was ever truly temporary when it came to their demands. It always became permanent, and I always became the one expected to adjust my entire life to accommodate everyone else's needs and problems. Austin, my older brother, who still lived with our parents at 32, didn't even bother looking at me. He was already scanning my apartment with critical eyes, inventorying everything. "Nice place," he muttered, a bitter edge to his tone. "You really spent all that money on this?" "I worked for it," I said flatly, not bothering to hide the defensiveness. He smirked, that condescending smirk that always made my blood pressure spike. "Yeah, we know. You remind us every chance you get." It's not like we can forget how successful you are while the rest of us struggle. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. There it was. The resentment that had been simmering for years. The idea that because I had succeeded through hard work, through discipline, because I'd been careful with my money and career choices, I was somehow arrogant or showing off. Never mind that Austin still lived in his childhood bedroom at 32. Never mind that Brianna had blown through 3 apartments in 2 years because she couldn't manage rent. Never mind that I had sacrificed, saved, and worked myself to exhaustion to get where I was. I was the problem because I had actually made something of myself. My mother walked through my open-plan living room, admiring the space with critical eyes, already calculating square footage and potential. This is more than enough room for 2 people. Brianna can take the second bedroom. You barely use it anyway, right? I opened my mouth to argue, to explain my specific plans for every inch of this space, but Brianna cut in. I really appreciate this, Eden. I know it's super last minute, and I'm sorry about that, but I promise I won't be in your way at all. Her voice was soft, apologetic, just like it always was when she needed something. And just like always, I felt that familiar pressure settling over me, like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The pressure to say yes. To be the good daughter, the responsible one, the sister who didn't make waves. But something fundamental had shifted in me over the past few months. Maybe it was finally having my own space after years of roommates and compromises. Maybe it was the accumulation of years of being taken for granted, finally reaching a breaking point. Or maybe it was just the simple fact that I had seen this exact scenario coming from miles away. And I had prepared accordingly. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, setting the mug down carefully on the granite counter. Let me get you all something to drink, I said, a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Coffee? Water? I have some fresh juice in the refrigerator. My mother waved me off dismissively. We're fine, Eden. We don't need anything. Let's just get Brianna settled in so we can get this done. Your father and I have dinner plans later. They moved through my apartment like they owned the place. Opening doors without asking. Peeking into rooms they had no business exploring. Discussing where Brianna's furniture should go, which walls might need different paint colors. I watched them with a strange sense of detachment, like I was observing a play I'd already seen performed 100 times. Because in a very real way, I had. This was the exact same script we'd been running for years, just different variations. They made decisions about my life. I complied without complaint. They took whatever they wanted. I gave until there was nothing left. But not this time. Not anymore. I had spent the last 2 months meticulously preparing for this exact scenario. I knew my family better than they knew themselves. I knew exactly how they operated, what they thought, what they assumed. I knew the moment I bought this penthouse, someone would try to move in with me. It was as inevitable as the sunrise. So, I had done something radical about it. I followed them down the hallway, my heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, but my face remained completely calm. They were heading confidently toward the second bedroom, the one they'd already decided belonged to Brianna. The one they thought she could just claim without any discussion, without any consideration of my feelings. Here it is, my mother said triumphantly, reaching for the door handle and pushing it open with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. And then she stopped dead in her tracks. They all stopped moving at once, frozen like statues. Because where there should have been a bedroom, with windows and space for furniture, there was now nothing. Nothing but a wall. A solid, professionally installed floor-to-ceiling wall that sealed off the entire guest wing permanently. The door they had just opened with such confidence led to absolutely nothing but smooth drywall and fresh white paint that still smelled faintly of primer. What is this? My mother demanded, spinning around to face me, her face a mask of complete shock and rapidly growing anger. Where is the bedroom? I leaned casually against the doorframe, arms crossed over my chest, feeling more in control than I had in years. That's my private studio now. I had it converted last week. The construction was just finished on Tuesday. My father stepped forward, staring at the wall as if it might disappear if he looked hard enough. You walled off an entire bedroom? That doesn't make any sense, Eden. It makes perfect sense to me, I replied calmly. I work from home frequently, and I needed dedicated office space that was separate from my living area. The second bedroom and guest bathroom were structurally separate from the main apartment, so it was the logical choice for conversion. Austin let out a low whistle, his eyes wide with disbelief. You actually sealed off a whole room just to spite us? That's next level petty even for you. I didn't do it to spite anyone, I said, keeping my voice level and reasonable. I did it because I wanted a functional home office. The fact that it prevents people from assuming they can move in without my permission is just a convenient bonus. My mother's face was turning an alarming shade of red. You knew. You knew we were planning this, and you deliberately sabotaged it. You sealed off the guest room specifically to keep Brianna out. I sealed it off to create the home I wanted, I corrected her firmly. Brianna's housing situation isn't my responsibility. She's an adult. You're adults. You can figure out living arrangements that don't involve commandeering my apartment. But we assumed. My father started. I know exactly what you assumed, I interrupted, feeling a surge of satisfaction at finally saying what I had been thinking for years. You assumed I'd just go along with this, like I always do. That I'd let Brianna move in because you decided it was convenient for everyone. You assumed my space was your space to allocate however you wanted. Brianna's face flushed deep pink with embarrassment. Eden, I really didn't mean to cause problems. I thought you knew about this. Mom said she had talked to you. She didn't, I said, looking directly at my mother. She never asked? She just decided. The silence that followed my words was thick, suffocating, filling every corner of the hallway like smoke. My mother stared at the wall as if she could will it to disappear through sheer force of her disapproval. Brianna looked between me and the sealed doorway like she couldn't quite process what she was seeing. Austin stood with his arms crossed, his expression caught somewhere between shock and grudging respect. You sealed off an entire room, my mother finally said, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. A perfectly good bedroom. Do you have any idea how much money you wasted on this? It's my money, I said simply. And I didn't waste it. I invested it in creating the home environment I need to be productive and happy. A home environment? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean a home environment where your own family isn't welcome? Where your sister can't stay when she needs help? I mean a home environment where I have boundaries. I shot back, feeling my own anger rising to match hers. Where people don't just show up and make decisions about my space without asking me first. My father frowned deeply, his disappointment written clearly across his face. Eden, this is incredibly selfish. Your sister genuinely needs help right now. She's going through a difficult transition period. She needs help from you, I corrected firmly. Not from me. You're her parents. Helping her is your job, not mine. We're all family, he said, using that tone he always used when he wanted to guilt me into compliance. Family helps family. That's what we do. Exactly, I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. We're family, and families should respect boundaries instead of trampling all over them. Families should ask before making major decisions that affect other people's lives. Families shouldn't assume that one person exists solely to solve everyone else's problems. Austin scoffed loudly, shaking his head in disgust. Boundaries? You're seriously talking about boundaries right now? You bought a luxury penthouse and you won't even let your own sister stay here when she's in a tough spot? Do you hear how that sounds? I worked for this place, I said, keeping my voice steady, even though I wanted to scream. I didn't ask any of you for a single dollar, not 1 cent. I earned every bit of this through years of hard work and sacrifice, and I'm not obligated to give it up or share it just because you think I should. My mother's expression hardened into something cold and distant. I can't believe you would turn your back on your own sister like this after everything we've done for you over the years. That statement hit me like a slap. I actually laughed out loud, Everything you've done for me, Mom? What exactly have you done for me? Because from where I'm standing, I've been on my own since I was 16 years old. That's not fair, she protested. But her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I challenged. When I needed a car for work and school, you told me to buy my own. When I needed help with college tuition, you said I should take out loans because you were saving money for Brianna's education. When I was working 2 jobs and barely sleeping just to make ends meet, you threw Brianna a party because she got a receptionist job she quit 3 months later. So, please tell me exactly what you've done for me that I should be so grateful for. The truth hung in the air between us. Undeniable. Uncomfortable. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again, apparently unable to come up with a response that would hold up under scrutiny. Brianna's eyes were filling with tears now. Eden, I never asked for any of this. I didn't know they were going to do this without talking to you first. I swear. I know you didn't ask. I said, softening my tone slightly when I looked at her. But you also didn't question it. You just went along with it because it was easier than figuring things out on your own. That's not fair, she whispered. But we both knew it was true. My mother grabbed her designer purse from the counter with sharp, angry movements. I think we've heard quite enough. This conversation is clearly going nowhere productive. Let's go. But what about Brianna's stuff? Austin asked, gesturing to the boxes they had brought in. We'll take it back, my mother said coldly, shooting me a look filled with hurt, anger, and disappointment. Obviously, we're not wanted here. Eden has made that abundantly clear. I'm not saying you're not wanted. I tried to explain, but I knew it was pointless. They had already decided I was the villain in this story. I'm just saying that my home isn't available as a solution to problems I didn't create and wasn't consulted about. My father shook his head slowly, his disappointment palpable. You've changed, Eden. Success has changed you. You used to be so caring and generous. Now you're just cold. No, I said firmly, surprised by the strength in my own voice. I haven't changed. I've just stopped letting you take advantage of me. There's a difference. The words landed like stones in still water, creating ripples that spread out in all directions. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. We all just stood there in my hallway, surrounded by boxes that would never be unpacked, separated by truths that had needed to be spoken for years. Brianna was the first to move, picking up one of her boxes with shaking hands. I'm sorry, she said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. I hope you know I never wanted to cause problems between you and everyone else. I know, I said, and I meant it. I hope you find a place that works out for you. I really do. She nodded slowly, still not looking directly at me, then followed our parents toward the door. Austin grabbed the remaining boxes with jerky, angry movements, muttering something under his breath I couldn't quite hear, but could definitely interpret from his tone. The door clicked shut behind them with a sound that felt remarkably final. And for the first time in what felt like years, I could finally breathe fully and freely. The first few days after my family left were strangely peaceful, a way I hadn't experienced in years. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner for one in my beautiful kitchen, and enjoyed the profound silence of my penthouse without any interruption or unwanted visitors. No one showed up unannounced. No one called demanding explanations or apologies. It was as if they had collectively decided to freeze me out. And honestly, I welcomed the distance with open arms. But I should have known better than to think it would last. On the 4th day after the confrontation, my phone rang during my lunch break. I was reviewing shipping manifests for our new distribution hub in Wisconsin when I saw my mother's name flash across the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, my finger hovering over the decline button, before finally answering. Eden, we need to talk. Her voice was calm and measured, using that particular tone she employed when she was trying to sound reasonable and mature, but was actually seething with anger underneath. About what? I asked, already knowing exactly where this was going. About what you did. About that wall you installed. About the way you treated your family when we were only trying to help your sister. I leaned back in my office chair, looking out at the city skyline. What about the wall, Mom? You deliberately sabotaged this arrangement, she accused, her voice rising slightly despite her obvious efforts to remain calm. You knew Brianna desperately needed a place to stay, and you made absolutely sure she couldn't have one. You went out of your way to prevent your own sister from having a home. I made sure I had the space I needed for my own home, I corrected her firmly. Brianna's housing situation isn't my responsibility. She's 26 years old. She's perfectly capable of finding her own apartment. She's your sister, Eden. Your own flesh and blood. And this is my apartment, I replied. My home that I bought with my own money, that I earned through years of hard work. I'm allowed to make decisions about my own space without asking permission from anyone. There was a long pause on the other end. Then my mother's voice turned cold and sharp as ice. You've changed, Eden. Ever since you got that promotion and started making decent money, you've become completely selfish and self-centered. You only think about yourself now. I actually laughed out loud at that statement, drawing curious looks from colleagues passing by my office. Selfish, Mom? I've spent my entire adult life bending over backwards for this family. I've loaned money that was never repaid. I've covered expenses no one ever offered to reimburse. I've listened to hours of complaints and problems and drama without ever once asking for help with my own struggles. And now, because I won't hand over my home like it's community property, I'm suddenly selfish? You're being overly dramatic about this, she said dismissively. We're just asking for a little help during a difficult time. No, I'm being honest for the first time in years, I countered, feeling something break free inside my chest. And you don't like it because my honesty doesn't serve your purposes or make your life easier. Another long pause stretched between us, filled with unspoken resentments and years of accumulated hurts. Your father and I are very disappointed in you, she finally said, playing what she clearly thought was her trump card. We raised you better than this. I know you're disappointed, I said quietly, surprised by how calm I felt. You've been disappointed in me for years, Mom. The only difference now is that I don't care anymore. Your disappointment doesn't control me. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but I felt oddly calm and centered. For years, I had been absolutely terrified of disappointing my parents, of being seen as difficult or ungrateful or selfish. But now, sitting in my office overlooking the city, that fear felt completely hollow and meaningless. I wasn't the problem in this family dynamic. I never had been. The phone calls didn't stop after that initial conversation. Over the next week, my phone buzzed constantly. My mother called 6 more times. My father left 3 voicemails. Austin sent angry text messages accusing me of tearing the family apart over my ego. Even Brianna reached out, though her messages were softer, more guilt-laden. I didn't know they were going to show up like that. I'm really sorry about all of this. I never wanted to cause problems between you and everyone else. Can we talk? Just the two of us? I feel like this whole situation got completely out of hand and I want to fix it. I never wanted to make you uncomfortable. I really appreciate everything you've done for the family over the years. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was angry at Brianna specifically, but because I understood the pattern intimately now. She would apologize and make me feel guilty for setting boundaries. Then someone else in the family would need something. Someone else would assume I would provide whatever they needed, and I would be right back where I started, trapped in the same exhausting cycle of giving until there was nothing left. I wasn't doing that again. Not ever. At work, I threw myself completely into a major project that required all my focus and energy. Treventa Corporation was expanding into 2 new distribution hubs in the Midwest, and I was leading the entire logistics coordination effort. It was intense, demanding work, requiring careful planning and constant problem-solving. But I genuinely loved it. There was something deeply satisfying about taking complex logistical challenges and creating elegant solutions that made everything run smoothly, even when everyone else thought success was impossible. My colleague Fiona noticed the shift in my demeanor during one of our afternoon coffee breaks. We were waiting for the ancient coffee maker to finish brewing when she said, "You seem different lately. Like something's changed." "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious about her perception. She tilted her head thoughtfully, studying my face. "I don't know exactly. Lighter, maybe? Like you're not carrying something incredibly heavy on your shoulders anymore. You seem more relaxed than I've ever seen you." I smiled at that observation. "I set a major boundary with my family recently. A really big one, and I actually stuck to it for the first time in my life." Fiona grinned widely, clearly pleased. "Good for you. Boundaries are seriously underrated. Everyone talks about self-care like it's bubble baths and face masks, but real self-care is telling people no when they're taking advantage of you." "That's exactly right," I agreed, feeling utterly validated. That evening, when I returned home to my penthouse, I found a handwritten note slipped under my door. I recognized my mother's distinctive handwriting immediately, even before I picked it up and unfolded the expensive stationery. "Eden, we're having a family dinner this Sunday at 5 p.m. at the house. Your father and I expect you to be there. It's time we resolve this situation like mature adults instead of avoiding each other. This silence is accomplishing nothing. Mom." I read the note twice, then walked directly to the kitchen and crumpled it up before tossing it in the trash can without a second thought. I wasn't going to that dinner. Not a chance. Sunday came and went without any acknowledgement from me. My phone rang 17 times throughout the day. I ignored every single call and let them all go to voicemail. By Monday morning, I had accumulated 3 voicemails, each one a variation of the same basic message: "You're tearing this entire family apart over your stubbornness and pride. How can you be so cold to the people who raised you and loved you your whole life? We just want to talk and work this out. Why are you being so unreasonable?" But I knew exactly what that conversation would look like if I attended that dinner. They would guilt me relentlessly. They would pressure me from all sides. They would frame my reasonable boundaries as cruelty and selfishness. They would paint me as the villain because it was infinitely easier than admitting they had taken me for granted and used me for years. I deleted all 3 voicemails without listening to them completely and made the decision to block their numbers from my phone entirely. It felt radical, extreme, almost reckless in a way that made my heart race. But it also felt absolutely necessary for my own mental health and well-being. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't waiting anxiously for their approval. I wasn't trying desperately to prove that I was good enough or valuable enough to deserve their respect. I was simply existing on my own terms, living my own life, and that simple fact was enough. 2 weeks after the wall incident had exploded my family relationships, I received a text message from an unknown number. "This is Brianna. I'm using a friend's phone because I know you probably blocked everyone. Please don't block this number, too. I really just want to talk to you. Just the 2 of us. No parents, no Austin, nobody else." I stared at that message for several long minutes, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely and maintain the distance I had worked so hard to create. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the little girl who used to follow me around everywhere when we were kids, wanted to hear what she had to say. I finally replied, "Okay, we can talk, but just talk. Nothing else." Her response came through almost immediately, like she had been waiting anxiously by her friend's phone. "Thank you. Can we meet somewhere? Just the 2 of us? I promise I'm not trying to ambush you or gang up on you with anyone else." I thought carefully about where to meet. Somewhere public, neutral, somewhere I could leave easily if the conversation went badly. "Coffee shop on 4th Street tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Come alone. I'll be there. Thank you for giving me a chance." The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and chose a seat by the large front window. I ordered a latte and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I had no idea what Brianna wanted to say, and I was determined not to let her guilt me into backing down from the boundaries I had established. Brianna showed up exactly at 10 a.m., looking tired and uncertain in a way I had rarely seen from her. She spotted me immediately and made her way over to the table, sliding into the chair across from me with a tentative, hesitant smile. "Thanks for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would actually show up." What do you want to say?" I asked directly, keeping my tone neutral and guarded. She took a deep breath, clearly gathering her courage. "I want to apologize for all of it, for the whole situation. I genuinely didn't know they were planning to move me into your place without asking you first. I swear on everything. When they first told me about your penthouse and suggested I might stay there, I thought it was just an idea they were floating around. I had no idea they were going to show up with boxes like it was already decided. But you went along with it," I pointed out, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "You packed your stuff and showed up ready to move in." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "I did. You're absolutely right, and I shouldn't have. I've been relying on them way too much for way too long. On you, too. Even if it wasn't direct, I always knew deep down that you were the one actually holding everything together in this family, and I took that completely for granted." I studied her face carefully, searching for any sign of manipulation or dishonesty. "What changed? Why are you saying this now?" "I talked to my friend Jessica about everything that happened," she explained. "She's the one whose phone I'm using. She pointed out some things that I really needed to hear. She said I've been letting Mom and Dad make all my decisions for my entire life and that it's not fair to you or to me. Honestly, I need to figure out my own life instead of constantly expecting other people to fix everything for me." "What are you going to do?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I found a roommate situation that should work out," she said, sounding more confident. "It's not fancy or anything special, but it's mine. I'm paying for it myself with money I'm earning. I'm also seriously looking into going back to school for something practical this time. Maybe medical billing or healthcare administration, or something with actual job prospects." "That sounds really good," I said. And I genuinely meant it. "I know you probably don't believe me right now," she said, her voice quiet and sincere. "But I really am sorry, Eden. You deserve so much better from all of us. From me especially. You've been carrying this family on your shoulders for years while we all just took and never gave anything back." I felt something loosen slightly in my chest. Not complete forgiveness, exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you probably realize." We sat in a somewhat comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee and watching people walk by outside the window. "Do you think we can ever get back to normal?" Brianna finally asked, breaking the silence. "Like how things used to be between us when we were younger?" I considered that question carefully, choosing my words with deliberate care. "I honestly don't know, Brianna. But I also think that normal wasn't actually working for me. It was working for everyone else, but it was slowly destroying me. So maybe we need to find something different instead. Something healthier for both of us." She nodded slowly, seeming to genuinely understand what I was saying. "Yeah, maybe you're right about that. Normal wasn't really fair to you at all, was it?" "No," I said simply. "It wasn't." We finished our coffee without saying much else. The conversation had reached a natural conclusion. When we stood to leave, Brianna hugged me briefly, and I let her. I didn't return the embrace with enthusiasm, but I didn't pull away either. It wasn't a full reconciliation. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But it was something. A starting point. A possibility for the future. But the rest of my family? That was an entirely different story that wouldn't be resolved as easily. Over the next month, my parents tried every possible angle to break down my boundaries and force me back into my old role. They sent long, guilt-laden emails detailing all the ways I was hurting the family. They recruited extended family members to reach out on their behalf, creating a coordinated campaign of pressure. My Aunt Patricia called me one afternoon, her voice dripping with disappointment as she said, "Your mother is absolutely heartbroken over this situation, Eden. Don't you think you're being just a little bit harsh and unforgiving?" I told her the exact same thing I told everyone else who tried to intervene. I set a reasonable boundary to protect my own space and well-being. If they can't respect that basic boundary, that's their choice to make, not mine. Eventually, slowly but surely, the calls began to slow down. The messages stopped arriving with such frequency. The pressure started to ease, and I realized something that surprised me deeply. I didn't miss them at all. I missed the idea of them, maybe, the idealized version of family I had always hoped we could be someday. But the actual reality of who they were, the exhausting and completely one-sided dynamic we had been living in for years, I didn't miss that at all. Not even a little bit. My life became quieter in the aftermath. Simpler. More peaceful. I focused intensely on my work, pouring my energy into projects that challenged and fulfilled me. I invested time in hobbies I had neglected for years. I started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings. I joined a book club. I even went on a solo trip to Colorado and spent an entire weekend hiking through mountains and reading by a pristine lake. I wasn't lonely. I was free. And that freedom felt like the most valuable thing I had ever earned in my entire life. One evening, about 6 weeks after the wall incident had permanently fractured my family relationships, I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink when my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Brianna. Just wanted to let you know I started my classes this week, medical billing certification program. It's harder than I expected, but I'm actually doing it. Thought you might want to know. I smiled genuinely and typed back immediately. I'm really proud of you. Keep going. Her response came through within seconds. Thanks. That actually means a lot coming from you. I set my phone down and looked out at the city sprawling below me. The skyline was painted in beautiful shades of pink and deep orange, and the cool evening air felt refreshing against my skin. I thought about the wall that had started all of this, about the door that led to nothing but blank space, about the choice I had made to protect my boundaries and my home. It had cost me something significant, my relationship with my parents, possibly permanently damaged beyond repair, the comfortable illusion of family unity I had desperately clung to for so long. But it had also given me something infinitely more valuable. It had given me myself back. My autonomy. My freedom. My self-respect. And that, I realized with complete certainty, was worth absolutely everything. I spent the next several months building a life that was genuinely mine in every way that mattered. Work continued to go extraordinarily well. I was promoted again, to Regional Logistics Director, a significant role with substantial responsibilities and a raise that made my original salary look tiny in comparison. My penthouse remained exactly what I had hoped it would be, a peaceful, private sanctuary that I filled deliberately with things that brought me joy and comfort. Plants lined every windowsill, creating a small jungle. Bookshelves covered an entire wall, filled with novels and biographies I had always wanted to read. My studio, the converted space that had once been designated as a guest room, was now a fully functional home office with a standing desk, dual computer monitors, and a view that made even the longest workdays feel bearable and pleasant. I had also started seeing someone new. His name was Owen, and I met him at a professional conference about supply chain innovations. He was a civil engineer with an infectious laugh and kind eyes, and most importantly, he respected my boundaries without question or complaint. When I told him the entire story about the wall and my family's reaction, he had laughed and said, "That's absolutely brilliant. I honestly wish I had thought of doing something similar with my own family years ago." We weren't serious yet, just dating casually and seeing where things might go. But it felt good to spend time with someone who understood instinctively what it meant to build a life on your own terms, without apology. One Saturday afternoon in late autumn, I was at a home goods store browsing through curtain options for my bedroom when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Something made me answer it instead of letting it go to voicemail. "Hello? It's Austin." I froze in the middle of the aisle, my hand still holding a fabric swatch. I hadn't spoken to my brother since the day they had tried to move Brianna into my apartment. "What do you want?" I asked cautiously, my guard immediately going up. I need to talk to you in person. It's important. Why would I agree to that? Because I owe you a genuine apology, he said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. And because there's something you really need to know about Mom and Dad. Something serious. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to decline and hang up immediately. But curiosity got the better of my caution. Fine. Coffee. The same place I met Brianna tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Don't be late. I'll be there. Thank you for giving me a chance. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early and secured a corner table where I could see the entrance. I ordered my usual latte and tried to prepare myself mentally for whatever Austin was going to say. Part of me expected him to try guilting me into helping with some family crisis. Another part worried this was an ambush disguised as an apology. Austin walked in exactly at 11, looking noticeably different from the last time I had seen him. He was thinner, almost gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. When he spotted me, he walked over slowly and gestured to the empty chair. Thanks for meeting me. I know you didn't have to. I didn't say anything at first. I just waited, watching his face carefully for any sign of manipulation or dishonesty. He took a deep breath and started talking. I've been doing a lot of thinking since that day at your apartment. About how we've treated you over the years, about how I specifically have treated you, about the things I said and the way I acted. And? I prompted when he paused. And you were completely right about everything. About all of it. We absolutely took you for granted. We made assumptions about your time, your money, your space. We acted like you owed us something just because we shared DNA. And when you finally said no and stood up for yourself, we tried to make you feel like you were the villain. What changed? I asked directly, not willing to just accept his words at face value without understanding his motivation. He rubbed his face tiredly. I moved out of Mom and Dad's house, finally. Got my own apartment about a month ago. Nothing fancy or impressive. Just a basic studio on the other side of town, but it's mine. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I'm actually paying all my own bills and managing my own life without anyone else doing it for me. Good for you, I said, meaning it genuinely. It's been really hard, he admitted. Like, way harder than I ever thought it would be. And it made me realize just how much you've been handling completely on your own for years. While I was sitting in my childhood bedroom judging you for being successful. I took a sip of my coffee, processing his words carefully. Is that what you wanted to tell me? Partly, he said. But there's something else. Something bigger. Mom and Dad are in serious financial trouble, Eden. Bad debt. Really bad. That got my full attention. How bad are we talking? Bad enough that they're looking at potentially losing the house if they don't figure something out soon. They've been borrowing from credit cards and taking out personal loans to maintain their lifestyle and keep up appearances. The debt has been piling up for years. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. How do you know all this? I found some financial documents when I was packing up my stuff to move out. Bank statements and credit card bills they had left lying around. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I started paying attention to things I had been ignoring for years. They're drowning, Eden. Why are you telling me this? I asked carefully. Austin met my eyes directly. Because they're planning to ask you for money. A lot of money. Like tens of thousands of dollars. And I wanted you to know before they showed up at your door or cornered you somewhere. I didn't want you to be blindsided by it. I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Surprise at the extent of their financial problems. Concern, despite my anger. And if I was being completely honest, a small flicker of vindication. They had spent years projecting an image of stability and success while judging my choices, and now that carefully constructed facade was crumbling. And you think I should help them? I said. Not really a question. No, he said, surprising me completely. Actually, I don't. I think they made their own choices and they need to face the consequences. But I also know they're going to try really hard to guilt you into saving them. And I didn't want you walking into that conversation unprepared. Thank you, I said sincerely. I appreciate the warning. He nodded. I also want to apologize for being such a jerk to you. For acting like you owed us something, for treating your success like it was somehow an insult to the rest of us instead of something to be proud of. You worked incredibly hard for everything you have. And I was wrong to make you feel bad about it. I appreciate that, I said quietly. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of dysfunction hanging between us. Are you doing okay? He asked finally. Like really okay? Yeah, I said, and I meant it completely. I actually am. Better than I've been in years, honestly. He smiled, though it looked sad around the edges. Good. You deserve that. You deserve to be happy after putting up with all of us for so long. True to Austin's warning, my parents reached out exactly 2 weeks later. My mother called first, and her voice was notably different from our last conversation, sweet, almost tentative, carefully calibrated to sound vulnerable. Eden, sweetheart, your father and I were really hoping we could take you out to dinner. Just the three of us. We miss you terribly, and we'd love to spend some time together. I'm busy, I said automatically. Please, honey, it's important. We really need to talk to you about something. I sighed, already knowing exactly where this was heading. Fine, but I'm picking the restaurant, and I'm only available for an hour. I have other commitments, of course. Whatever works for you, dear. We met at a casual Italian restaurant near my office building 2 days later. My parents arrived looking notably strained but determinedly cheerful, putting on brave faces that didn't quite reach their eyes. We ordered food and made awkward small talk about the weather and traffic and other meaningless topics, dancing around the real reason we were there. Finally, after the waiter brought our entrees, my father cleared his throat and got to the actual point. Eden, we need to discuss something serious with you. Your mother and I have hit some rough patches financially. Some unexpected expenses and unfortunate situations have put us in a difficult position. We were hoping you might be able to help us out temporarily. How much? I asked bluntly, not interested in dancing around the subject. My mother flinched at my directness. We were thinking around $30,000. Just to get us back on stable ground. We'd pay you back, of course, with interest if you want. I took a slow sip of water and set the glass down carefully on the table. No. My father's expression shifted to confusion. Eden, we're your parents? This is serious. I understand it's serious, I said calmly. And my answer is still no. I'm not giving you $30,000. We'll pay you back. My mother insisted desperately. We promise, every single penny. No, you won't, I said flatly. Just like you never paid back the $5,000 I loaned Austin 4 years ago, or the $3,000 I gave Brianna when she got evicted from her second apartment, or the countless other times I covered expenses and never saw that money again. You won't pay me back because you've never paid anyone back in your entire lives. That's completely different. My father protested weakly. How is it different? I challenged. Explain to me. Exactly how this situation is different from all those other times. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had no explanation because there wasn't one. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Eden, please. We're genuinely struggling here. We could lose the house. Don't you care about that at all? I care that you're struggling, I said honestly. But I'm not responsible for fixing problems you created through your own choices. You spent years living beyond your means to maintain appearances. You borrowed money you couldn't pay back. You made financial decisions without considering consequences. Those were your choices, not mine. But where are your parents? My father said, playing what he clearly thought was his strongest card. Children are supposed to help their parents when they're in need. And parents are supposed to support their children. I countered. They're supposed to treat them fairly and help them when they need it. But you didn't do that for me ever. So don't lecture me about family obligations now that you need something. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. I can't believe you would abandon us like this in our time of need after everything we did for you growing up. What did you do for me? I asked, genuinely curious to hear her answer. Please tell me specifically what you did that I should be so grateful for. She stammered, clearly not expecting the question. We raised you. We fed you and clothed you and gave you a home. That's called the bare minimum of parenting. I said. That's literally the legal requirement. You're supposed to do those things. That doesn't mean I owe you my life savings in return. I stood up from the table, leaving cash for my portion of the meal. I hope you figure out your financial situation genuinely, but I'm not your solution, and I never will be again. Eden, please. My mother called after me. But I was already walking toward the exit. I left the restaurant and walked back to my office, breathing in the cool autumn air. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. I felt calm and centered and absolutely certain that I had made the right choice. That evening, I sat on my balcony and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over Minneapolis. I thought about the wall, about the space I had protected, about the boundaries I had drawn and defended. And I realized something profound and liberating. Revenge didn't always look like anger or spite or dramatic confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful revenge was simply refusing to be used anymore. Refusing to sacrifice yourself for people who had never sacrificed anything for you. Sometimes revenge looked like freedom, like peace, like finally choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else first. The months that followed were genuinely some of the best of my entire life. I continued to excel at work, earning recognition and respect from colleagues and supervisors. The expansion project I had led was completed successfully and brought substantial new business to Travanta. My relationship with Owen deepened naturally, without pressure or drama. We traveled together on weekends, explored new restaurants, attended concerts and art exhibits. Brianna and I maintained a cautious but genuinely respectful relationship, meeting for coffee every few weeks to catch up on our separate lives. Austin and I texted occasionally, checking in but maintaining a healthy distance. My parents eventually had no choice but to downsize dramatically. They sold their house at a loss and moved into a modest 2-bedroom condo on the outskirts of the city. My father took a part-time consulting job. My mother started working retail at a department store, something I knew wounded her pride deeply. They never apologized for how they had treated me. They never acknowledged the years of taking me for granted. But they also stopped asking me for help or money. And I stopped waiting for them to change or recognize what they had done. One evening, almost a year after the wall incident that had changed everything, I hosted a small dinner party at my penthouse. I invited Fiona from work, Owen, a few other friends I had grown closer to. We cooked together in my beautiful kitchen, laughed over wine, stayed up late talking about books and movies and dreams for the future. When everyone finally left around midnight, Owen stayed behind to help me clean up the dishes. "This place really suits you," he said, loading wine glasses carefully into the dishwasher. "It feels like you. Peaceful and intentional." "It does," I agreed, feeling contentment settle over me like a warm blanket. He glanced down the hallway toward the studio, toward the wall that had started everything. "Do you ever regret it? Building that wall and standing your ground, even though it cost you your family relationships?" I thought about his question carefully, considering it from every angle. No, not even a little bit. It was the best decision I ever made for myself. He smiled and kissed my forehead gently. "Good. You deserve to be happy." As I stood in my kitchen that night, looking around at the home I had built entirely on my own terms, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete and total peace. Not because everything in my life was perfect or resolved, but because I had finally stopped trying to please people who would never be satisfied no matter what I did. I had protected my space. I had defended my boundaries with everything I had. And I had proven to myself that I didn't need anyone's approval or permission to live my life exactly how I wanted. The wall wasn't just drywall and paint and construction materials. It was a symbol of everything I had learned through years of being taken advantage of and finally choosing myself. That love without genuine respect is completely empty. That family doesn't automatically mean endless sacrifice of yourself. And that sometimes the kindest and most necessary thing you can do for yourself is to simply say no and mean it. My parents never did recover financially the way they had hoped. They struggled for years with mounting debt and diminishing resources, eventually filing for bankruptcy that wiped out most of what they owned. My father's part-time consulting work never led to anything permanent. My mother's retail job barely covered basic expenses. They blamed their situation on bad luck, on the economy, on unfair circumstances, on everything except their own decades of poor choices. Austin checked in on them occasionally out of obligation, but he had learned his own hard lessons about boundaries and self-preservation. He didn't bail them out either, no matter how much they pressured him. Brianna finished her medical billing certification program with surprisingly good grades and landed a stable job at a large clinic that offered benefits and room for advancement. She moved into a small but comfortable apartment that she shared with a reliable roommate, and she slowly built a life that was actually hers for the first time. We stayed in touch regularly, meeting for coffee or lunch every few weeks. The dynamic between us would never be what it was when we were children, but it was healthier now, more honest, more equal. As for me, I kept moving forward into a future I was building deliberately. I traveled extensively. I grew and advanced in my career. I invested deeply in friendships and relationships that brought genuine joy and reciprocity into my life. Owen and I eventually moved in together, not into my penthouse, but into a new place we chose together as equal partners. The penthouse remained mine, a space I kept as both a home base and a constant reminder of where I had come from, and what I had fought so hard to protect. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized with absolute clarity that the wall was never really about revenge against my family. It was about self-preservation. It was about protecting the life I had worked so desperately hard to build. It was the moment I finally stopped letting other people write the story of my life and took control of the pen myself. And in protecting that space, that boundary, that fundamental right to my own home and my own choices, I had ultimately protected the most important thing of all. I had protected myself. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your family, even when it felt impossible? What did you do? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them.